So on one side, there can be seen as being the people who only or primarily listen to the mainstream media, and on the other, there can be seen as those who pretty much only listen to the alternative media. And when it comes down to how the former perceive the latter, they can see them as being conspiracy theorists. And when it comes to how the latter see the former, they can see them as being sheep. And so there's naturally a conflict, or very often a conflict, between these two types of people. And when someone pays attention primarily to the alternative media, they can disregard just about everything they hear in the mainstream. So they're not going to listen to the mainstream authority figures, they're just going to pay attention to alternative news sources. And while it would be easy to call people like this conspiracy theorists, it is not as though the mainstream media doesn't lie, or as though certain conspiracy theories have been proven correct over the years. However, just because someone listens to or only pays attention to the alternative media, it doesn't mean that everything they hear is going to be correct. But if someone does pay attention to the alternative media and watches videos and reads articles about all these things that appear to be going on in the world, they can naturally end up feeling angry and enraged or powerless and helpless, because they can hear about what's happening with children being trafficked. They can hear about corruption in their own government and all kinds of other things. And if someone like this was to talk to someone else, someone, let's say, who only pays attention to the mainstream media about what is taking place, all they say can end up being dismissed, and they can be described as a conspiracy theorist, seen as someone who's a bit crazy. And at this point, it could seem as though one person cares about the injustices in the world and the abuse of power that is going on, whereas the other person doesn't. And although this could be the case, that the other person has got their head in the sand, whereas the other person who pays attention to other news sources hasn't, there can be another reason as to why they are drawn to this information that constantly talks about the abuse of power. And one reason why someone will be drawn to these kinds of things can be because it reminds them unconsciously of what they experienced as a child. So when they were very small, the people or the person who was meant to look after them, or someone else who was involved in their life, may have taken advantage of them. They may have abused them in some way, they may have neglected them. So the authority figure who was meant to look after them would have abused their power and would have violated them on a weekly, if not daily basis. So through carrying this trauma that they have disconnected from, they will then feel a strong need to right the wrongs of the world. And this time, instead of being a victim, the powerless victim, which is what they would have been as a child, now they can position themselves as a saviour. However, as they are projecting what is within them, what they have lost touch with, onto the world, and are trying to change the world, is not going to allow them to really resolve what is taking place within them. In order for this to happen, they would need to heal their inner wounds, and this is not going to take place through trying to change the world. So that can then be one reason why someone would be drawn to these situations in the external world where there is an abuse of power. And although it may seem as though trying to change what's going on out there is the best thing to do, as they are trying to change what is going on, they can indirectly be sustaining the darkness that is in the world. It's because they will be carrying a resonance, a consciousness of victimhood, of violation. So through trying to change what is going on, they can end up sustaining it without realizing it. And this is why it's often said that we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. And so as we are not merely observers of reality and we are actively playing a part, this means that it's not just a case of changing our behaviour and doing the right thing. In order to change the world, we need to be in the right place, to be an example along with our behaviour, because it can be very easy to do the right things, but to be coming from a place of victimhood or violation, trauma, as I've said, and through coming from this place, it can still help to sustain the old reality that we can feel the need to change. So with this in mind, if someone wants to really change the world, dealing with their own wounds and owning their own projections, what they think is out there, is actually coming from within them. But the only way they're going to be able to see this is if they go within and start to heal themselves. And through doing this, they won't be feeding into the old reality. They will be an example of what they want to see in the world. Because as I see it, in order for the darkness in the world to disappear, as human beings we need to own our own darkness and to acknowledge it and to work through it. And as this takes place, all these expressions of darkness out there won't be able to survive, because they won't be able to receive the energy that they need to sustain themselves. But of course, trying to change the world can be very enticing, and it can allow us to feel good, but going within can be very painful. So if you can relate to this and you want to change the world, perhaps it would be a good idea for you to work on your own wounds, if of course you're not already doing this.